Good morning, everyone. I am Cherigen M. Russell, and this is a continuation report of the topic Introduction to Contemporary Literature, and I will be discussing about the story. So, what is story? So, a story or narrative is a connected series of events told through words, either written or spoken, imagery, still and moving, body language, performance, music, or any other form of communication. You can tell a story about anything, and the events described can be real or imaginary, covering both fiction and non-fiction, and leaving no topic, genre, or style untouched. There are stories about all things and all times, past, present, or future. So, a story is more than just a word. It's a way of sharing experiences, ideas, and lessons. It can be expressed through words like novels, poems, short stories such as Ibong Adarna, Florante at Laura, image like comics, Bogad Baboy, or morals or films, performances like stage plays, for example, Walang Sugat by Severino Reyes or dance dramas. Music like epic chants such as Hudhud of the Ifugao, Darangin of the Maranao. And a story can be fiction. When we say fiction, it's imagined or invented. Or non-fiction, when we say non-fiction, it is based on real events. And no matter how it is told, a story connects people across time and culture. So, for example, Rizal's Norli Mitanghere is a story written in the past, but it is still meaningful today. So, we have here an example of story. So, here are a few examples of the same story told in different ways. So, you can sometimes tell a story in just one line. The girl met the love of her life and lived happily until the day she died, or it could be more detailed. So, this is the example of a more detailed story. Types of stories. The range of types of stories is pretty much endless. For that reason, this article will divide stories into two very broad categories, fiction and nonfiction. Within each, there are a huge number of possibilities in terms of subject matter, genre, type of delivery, oral, or delivery, such as oral, written, performance, and narrative styles, and so on. So, when we say types of stories, it is because humans are natural storytellers. There are countless ways of telling stories. So, to simplify, we divide them into two main groups. We have fiction, which is imaginary or creative stories. For example, of a fiction story, we have Alamat ng Sambagita, which is a legend. Si Malakas at si Maganda, which is a myth, and Pedro Pindoco, which is a fantasy. So, these three examples are fiction. Next is nonfiction. So, nonfiction, as I've said earlier, it is real life stories based on facts and true experiences. So, for example, Mga Gunita ng Himagsikan, which is written by Apolinario Mabini. So, Mga Gunita ng Himagsikan is an autobiography. News articles about Typhoon Yolanda, survivor stories of martial law. So these examples are an example of a non-fiction. So stories can be delivered in many forms. Oral tradition, written text, performances, or digital media. Again, so when we say stories, so it is ways to share life and imagination. And when we say types of fiction, we have types of stories. We have fiction. When we say fiction, it is a made up, and non-fiction is real. So both are powerful tools that teach lessons, preserve culture, and inspire imagination. Fiction stories. So fiction stories are are has are based on made up or imaginary events. So there are dozens upon dozens of type of fiction stories and genres, including but not at all limited to So, in fiction stories, we have fairy tales, folklore, mythology, legends, dramas, adventure stories, historical fiction, fantasy, science fiction, love stories, horror stories, ghost stories, and bedtime stories. So I have here an example of each types of fiction stories. So for fairy tales, we have Ibong Adarna. For folklore, we have Alamat ng Pinya. For mythology, we have stories of Bathala and other Tagalog deities. For legends, we have Alamat ng Sampaguita. For dramas, Walang Sugat by Severino Reyes. For adventure stories, Si Malakas at Si Maganda. Historical fiction is No Limitang Here by Dr. Jose Rizal. Fantasy, which is the Pedro Pinduco. Science fiction, which is the Trece, which is a Philippine graphic novel with the science fiction elements. Love stories, Mula sa Puso, adapted to TV and book form. Horror stories by Chanak Stories, White Lady Tales. Ghost stories, stories of Baliti Tribe, and bedtime stories, mga kwentong alamat passed down to children. Next is non-fiction stories. So non-fiction stories can cover any kind of real events or experiences, but they often fall into these kinds of categories. So here are the categories. Non-fiction stories, historical events, nouns and current events, biographies, autobiographies, memorica and experiences, cultural history, crime and justice, science, love, travel stories, survivor stories, and war stories. So I have here an example for each categories of non-fiction stories. So um for historical events, we have the Philippine Revolution of 1896 accounts. News and current events, for example, we have stories published in Philippine Daily Inquirer or Rappler. For biographies, we have Aguinaldo's Memoirs. And autobiographies, we have Mga Gunita ng Himagsikan by Apolinario Mabini. Memories and experiences, we have um, Dekada 70 by Lolhati Bautista, which is partly based on real martial law experiences. Cultural history, which is The Passion and Revolution by Rinaldo Ilito. Crime and Justice, martial law victims' testimonies. And for science, we have works of Jose Rizal on medicine, like his ophthalmology practice. Love, well, in love, we have real life love story of Andres Bonifacio and Gregoria de Jesus. Family, Ang Mga Anak, Dalita Essays. Well, travel stories, Luzon to Visayas, travelogues by Nick Joaquin. And for survivor stories, we have narratives of Typhoon Yolanda, Survivors. And lastly, for war stories, we have Bataan That March, Survivors accounts. So these are the categories under non-fiction story. So when we say non-fiction, it is based on real life events, peoples, and experiences, while the fiction is based on imagination or made up events. Importance of a story. Stories have been and always will be an absolutely essential part of human culture. Stories are how we learn about each other, our past, and our cultures. Whether they are created for entertainment or to recount a real life event, new stories are literally being lived, told, and created every second of every day. Next is we have the examples of literature. So first, let's ask, what is literature? So literature is any written work that expresses ideas, emotions, or tells a story, and it often reflects culture, values, and human experiences. Well, literature can be in the form of novels, poems, plays, short stories, essays, and epics. So, for example of literature, we have No Limitang Here and El Filibusterismo by Dr. Rizal, Iliad and Odyssey by Homer, Florante at Laura by Francisco Balagtas, poems by Emily Dickinson. Also, I have examples of story literature that I've presented in the PowerPoint. Two examples actually. We have the example number one. Author Shel Silverstein is known for the quirky and memorable stories he 33 tells through poetry. Here is a mass from his collection of poems, Everything on It. So this is the example number one. And for example number two, in literature, we have a fairy tale is a classic type of stories about imagery events. When you want to tell a fairy tale, we often start with the famous words once upon a time, which adds a more whimsical feel to what we are about to share. Here's an example from Rapunzel of Grimm's fairy tale. So the once upon a time there was a man and a woman who had long but to no avail until the end of this. This is an example of literature. Next is popular literature. So what is popular literature? So popular literature is writing created mainly for entertainment and an easy enjoyment by a wide audience. It is usually more accessible, trendy, and modern, often connected to popular culture. This includes comics, song lyrics, TV scripts, Roman novels, and fantasy series. So I have presented a example in the presentation. So example number one. Everybody knows Will Smith retro anthem, Prince of Bel-Air, the theme song to the hit 19th sitcom Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So in the show's intro, Smith uses this rap to fill the audiences in on his backstory. So the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air theme song, which is the short version, is the song quickly reviews the story of his past, which serves as an intro to what the show is about. He recounts the events that leads to his life being turned upside down and the story of how he became the Prince of Bel-Air. And for example number two, we have the Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. So these are the two examples in popular culture, but another examples of popular literature that another example is the Harry Potter series by J.K. Rowling. We still it is also presented in the presentation. Next is Twilight series by Stephanie Meyer. Song lyrics like Love Story by Taylor Swift. And Filipino comics, for example, Darna by Mars Ravilo, and Wattpad stories like Diary ng Pangit is an example of popular literature. Okay, so when we say literature, it is a timeless, classic, and deeper works that reflect culture and ideas, while popular literature is modern, entertaining, and easily relatable works loved by the masses. So that would be all. Thank you.